5915 14 13 and we are in the countdown, and it is now time, folks, friends, countrymen and countrywomen. How you doing? This is Bob Gumbs here today with the Conservative Forum, and I got a very great guest here, a good friend of mine. Introduce yourself, Dan.
Daniel Vila from the Green Party, chair of the Manhattan Greens.
And we're going to talk about this upcoming election, about the two conventions. Well, really, I would say the Democratic convention and the Republican lynch mob. That's what it reminded me of. One thing, well, we're going to say a lot of things. One of the things I find disturbing when I look at white working class, especially white working class men, and as everybody knows, and I know I talk about it a hell of a lot, one reason is because, I'll be honest about it, I'm kind of a strange anomaly, because I guess you could say I'm a left-wing Democrat, but I'm very proud of the time that I spent in the Navy. Yes, when I was 17 and 18, I was in the Army also, but my biggest joy of serving my country came to me when I was in the Navy. And as you can imagine, Army, Navy, Army Reserve, National Guard. So I'm used to being with basically working class people. The white guys out there that think that they're for Trump or are leaning towards Trump, I served with them. In some cases, their dads or their younger brothers or older brothers. And so I see myself, I kind of understand where they're coming from, put it that way. And it really saddens me because these guys, a lot of them, and especially those that are out there in the heartland, they are so patriotic. They believe in the American ethos so much. And it hurts me to see them really being taken advantage of by a lousy con man, because that's all this guy is. And I'm a native New Yorker, all right? And all of us native New Yorkers, we know Donald Trump. We know what this guy is about. And it's not just crying about racism, because, that goes without saying. I got facts and figures here. I got a timeline on this guy and his race, him and his dad, and their racist, bigoted activities in the construction field. But it's more than that. It's a guy cozying up to one of the world's biggest oligarchs, Putin. And, why are you going to follow a guy that holds up as his hero one of the world's biggest dictators? I find that kind of scary. Over there, they don't sue newspaper people. They kill them. And this is the guy that Donald Trump seems to want to emulate himself after. I find that very scary. And what really bothers me, another thing that really bothers me about this guy, all the time I spent in D.C., in the White House, in the Pentagon, doing intel work, the idea that someone this thin-skinned would have access to a lot of the things that I saw when I was stationed in these places, it's frightening. And it's not like, okay, well, Bob is a Democrat, he wants to get people scared. because Trump is running on the Republican ticket. It's not a question of me wanting to get you afraid. You should be afraid of this man, okay? People talk about the choice between the lesser of two evils. There's no choice in this case, in this particular case, in this box here, this election, all right? It's not about a choice between two evils. Trump is the evil one, period. The people who are supporting him, I mean, on the upper levels, all right? They are evil. His chief of staff, this businessman that is extremely close with the money men in Russia and the Russian faction of the Ukraine. This is what we're talking about here. And I think that you need to be aware of that. You talk about your patriotism, yet you follow a guy that makes a joke out of one of our greatest living American heroes. I'm talking about Senator John McCain. That really ticks me off. It ticks me off as an American. It ticks me off as a Navy veteran. Because John McCain was sitting up in the Hanoi Hilton while Donald Trump was busy running through the village, Greenwich Village, doing his thing and getting his full deferments. And then finally he got, he just said, well, look, I got a bad tutu on my foot, so just don't mess with me anymore. Meanwhile, John McCain is in the prison camp in the Hanoi Hilton getting his ass kicked. Why? Because he chose to wait his term to be repatriated. And this is a man that you're trying to make, you're making little of. Oh, well, I like guys that don't get captured. Who the hell is he to make a statement like that? And I'm very disappointed that some of you in the comment lines, like on Yahoo, were poking fun at the Islamic man and his wife who gave their son to this country. This boy died protecting his men in Afghanistan. And some of the comments that I read, I mean, they were so, so full of hate. And I'm asking you, okay, as a guy that I sailed the world with some of you guys. I fought next to some of you guys, side by side. And I'm asking you, think about what you're doing. I don't want to take up the whole conversation because I have to be careful because this is a very emotional subject for me. But I'm going to let my brother Daniel here because he's doing his thing for the Green Party and we're a transparent show. So say your piece, Daniel.
Well, first of all, Bob, I want to thank you for letting me on your show. It's a pleasure to be here with you and to exchange ideas in an intelligent way, right, with you and also with our audience. And I respect you, first of all, as an African-American man who is doing, obviously, the best that he can within, the Democratic Party. In my opinion, as bad as it is, you're trying to do the best that you can for African Americans and military people and former military people. And incidentally, when Mr. Gumbs said the Hanoi Hilton, for those younger listeners that are not aware, it is not a hotel. The Hanoi Hilton refers to a prison in North Vietnam where the Senator McCain was a prisoner for many years. I just want to say this regarding Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. In our opinion, they're just as bad. We have a candidate in the Green Party. Incidentally, my name is Daniel Vila again, and I'm chair of the Manhattan Greens, and I'm running for Congress for the 13th District. The last time that I ran, I have received around 12% of the vote, running against Charlie Rangel. He is no longer a candidate. This time I'll be running against Espaillat, and there is a Republican candidate running also. So let's see how it works out this time. In any case, we feel that the Green Party has an excellent candidate with JUL Stein. JUL Stein is not owned by the corporate sector. JUL Stein has a program, a political program. Obviously, in this brief time, I will not be able to give you all of the information. I beg our listeners to please look into the JUL Stein's website and also the Green Party website to receive more information on where she stands on issues. But specifically, I'll tell you right off the bat, one thing that nobody mentions, for example, not even most so-called socialists, she proposes nationalizing Con Edison. Now, that is very important.
Oh, okay.
Nationalizing energy. And it would be obviously not only Con Edison in this country if she would be president, but we're talking about something as dangerous as taking out of the private sector and closing down the nuclear reactors over at Indian Point, which, as everybody knows, that's only 36 miles away from central Manhattan. And there have been hundreds of problems, of leakages of water, radiation, explosions. Within the last year, there was an explosion of a transformer, and the whole plant had to be shut down. Last year alone, 1 billion fish were killed in the process of Indian Point using the millions of gallons of water that they use for keeping cool the entire plant and so on. So in any case, one of the areas where she is very strong, very powerful is on clean energy, shutting down Indian Point, also nationalizing Con Edison, so that all those billions of dollars that these thieves take away from New Yorkers, working people, would remain within the government, within the state, and to be used again to help our economy. She is also for free health care for all. She is also for free higher education for everybody. Doesn't mean that the private sector has to be eliminated. It could continue going, making billions off of, profiting off of education. But she is also in favor of free education for anyone who is interested in going into university. She also has a program which looks towards creating millions of new jobs, again, opposing the TPP and NAFTA. TPP is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. NAFTA, as you know, has the North American Free Trade Agreement, has been responsible in the last 15 years, Bob, for losing in this country over 60,000 factories have left the United States, over 60,000. And we have lost some millions of jobs, over 4 million jobs in the United States during that period, due to the fact that these factories are leaving the country and going to Mexico, to China, other places where they could get pay the workers $1 or $2 an hour. So she is against these international agreements, which are really violating the rights of workers, eliminating NAFTA, eliminating the TPP, and creating jobs in this country.
You know, let me say, I hear where you're coming from. And essentially, for what you said, for the most part, I agree with. I've seen JUL Stein. I've heard what she has to say. And I'll tell you, as a Democrat, as a progressive Democrat, I think that she has a lot going for herself. I think that it would be they would better serve their purpose in the Green Party if they could get her on the ballot to vote to all 50 states. That's one of the things that I'm looking at. I think the biggest, and before I go any further, let me state that at one time I was a member of the Green Party for about 3.5 years, and I went back to the Democratic Party in 2007. I just had to get, for the sake of transparency, I wanted to get that out of the way. I think the problem with the Green Party is that they try to build a house sometimes in midair. By that, they don't pay enough attention to setting up a good basic local framework. I think before you start doing forays into national politics, I think that you should have a few state assembly people, some Congress people, some senators, what have you, because when you run for presidency, if you don't have a certain amount of support in the House or in the Senate, your legislation is going to have an extremely hard time making it. And I think that one of the problems with progressives, especially here in the Northeast, is that too often we confuse politics with the movement. And what we have to understand, it was just like in the 60s, you have to have both. You have to have a Martin Luther King, and you have to have a Lyndon Baines Johnson, okay, working both sides of the street. And that is what I would say, that's what's needed now, to a point. But I think what we got to keep in mind, I'm not going to talk about this like we're talking in the realm of regular politics. Like, okay, well, I'm a Democrat, you're a Green, this guy over here is a Republican. It's not about that this time around. We're dealing on very dangerous territory here. I honestly believe, taking everything that I know about the world situation, everything I know about Donald Trump, everything I know, more importantly, about the people that are supporting him, we run a very good chance that if we somehow allow him to slip into the White House, there may not be a Green Party in a couple of years. There might not even be a Democratic Party, now that I think about it. There might not be a movement that we would like to see. That's why essentially what I'm doing, and I agree with Hillary's strategy on this, we're trying to get everybody, the Republicans, independents, so-called conservative Democrats, progressives, everyone, because we see Donald Trump as a national threat. And, as a Democrat, you're going to ask me about my choice for a presidential candidate? No, well, originally I was for Bernie Sanders, quite frankly, and I was somewhat disappointed when he didn't get the nomination. Although, to tell you the truth, in a way, I really wasn't surprised. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. I think in some parts of the country, Bernie did not, we'll put it this way, the campaign was not run as well as it could have been. Certain areas, certain communities felt somewhat slighted, which has been a long-running problem with progressives and the communities of color, okay? I think that it would have been more to their advantage if couple of Sunday mornings, if Bernie Sanders or his campaign entourage would be quietly sitting in the back of a Black Baptist church or a Latino evangelical church and just sit back there. And then at the end of the service, start, respectfully approaching the people as they were coming outside, introducing themselves, doing things of that nature.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for your recommendations in terms of how the Green Party could improve its electoral representation. Maybe that's one of the reasons why you should go back into the Green Party so that you could help us and develop strategies in terms of how to get more votes. But specifically, I'm going to be honest, a little bit hard hitting here. Look, Bernie Sanders deserved and should have, from his work and from his popular support, should have received that nomination in the Democratic Party. What happened is that there was a lot of nasty stuff going on behind the scenes, and it's all coming out now. We have seen these. We have seen these WikiLeaks information. Some people are blaming the Russians. Some are blaming the Chinese. Some are blaming whatever it is. Whoever did it, they did a favor to the American public, because now people know within the hierarchy of the administration of the Democratic Party, which is supposed to be neutral. They were sabotaging, doing everything possible, even trying to destroy him because of the fact that he is Jewish and his religion and so on and so forth. Wasserman, she had to resign. It was so obvious, and she was so disgraced by it, and she didn't want to contaminate Hillary. But of course, we all know that Hillary was part of this strategy to demonize poor Sanders also. Well, and let me continue on this because you want to for a little while. I just want to make this clear. There were hundreds of thousands of votes that were neutralized or eliminated in Brooklyn. Also, in the primaries in New York State. In California, there are accusations of corruption over there and the way that votes were stolen. So Bernie probably would have won the election, if he had close to 40% of the convention. I was in Philadelphia. I didn't get to go inside. I'm not a Democrat. I was outside, and it was incredible the amount of support for Bernie all over Philadelphia, on the streets and conferences and so on and so forth. Now, in terms of this thing of the devil, the demon, Donald Trump, I remember when I was 14 years old, 1964, and there was this guy who was going to destroy the world. His name was
Barry Goldwater.
Barry Goldwater. And I still remember going to bed, man, and I had nightmares. I had nightmares at night. Literally, I could see the world going, because they used to have this commercial, part of the campaign of the Democratic Party of Lyndon Johnson, who did become president, was to show a nuclear explosion and everything was going kaputs. Yeah. And so I used to feel, and then Johnson wins the election, and what does he do? He gets up, I guess was involved in Vietnam and all these wars all over Asia and many other parts of the world, and responsible for dictatorships throughout South America. So he was no better, he was probably worse. So this thing of demonizing Donald Trump, I've had it already with this thing of seeing like Donald Trump is the worser of the Republicans, or the worst evil or whatever. I think we have to not vote against somebody. I think we have to vote for somebody, and in this manner, voting for the Green Party is, like you say, you're probably right, That's how come I recommend you again, come back into the Green Party. Maybe we should be running candidates and running for City Hall over here, City Council over there, Senator over there, and then eventually having, but at this point, right now, we have a very powerful woman with beautiful ideas for the working class, wants to eliminate this NAFTA thing, which has eliminated, cost millions and millions of jobs. That's one of the key points that Donald Trump is basing his campaign, the loss of jobs in this country. And Hillary Clinton was behind the North American Free Trade Agreement. She is behind TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. She wants these international deals for the corporate sector, because what does it do? It gives, big business the ability to leave this country, go to other countries, get all these tax incentives, and then pay wages over there, ridiculous wages of $1 an hour, 50 cents an hour. I was, in the 1990s, I was very active around supporting the campaign with Local 808, led by Chris Silveda out in Queens, for Staples. They wanted to remain here in the United States. They did not want that plant to be shut down. They were making fairly decent wages. It wasn't a lot of that much money, but they had medical plans, they had union benefits, and so on and so forth. That plant moved to Mexico, one of 3,000. There are over 3,000 maquiladoras with just 1 million jobs on that border there, practically on the maquiladoras. And most of those companies have gone from the United States, like Staples, and they go there, pay $1 an hour. How could American workers compete against that? We're totally against that in the Green Party. We think that those treaties have to be destroyed. Working people here deserve good, decent jobs. Finally, on this point, the average white man, and for the women it's even worse. We are talking about white men. The average white man in the United States, by $1973 compared to $2016 is making over $3,000, close to $4,000 a year less. $4,000 a year less. That's the average white man. Forget about it. In terms of black people and Latinos and immigrants, we're really being screwed here. So all of these international deals and treaties have hurt working people here in this country, all across the board. And we want jobs here that are decent jobs.
Daniel, I agree with you on that, but we don't need Donald Trump to do that. Now, let me, because I want to bring people's attention to this. And this I'm getting from Nick Kristof. who did the research on this. Some of this I already knew. I already knew from just growing up here in New York and being aware of what was happening. Through about over 1,000 pages of documents, the legal battle, talking about the whole issue of Trump, his fortune, and the race issue, and it's devastating. Donald Trump, this is back in about '73. This was the fight between the Trump family and Nixon's Justice Department. Not Johnson's, not Jack Kennedy's, but Nixon's, okay? And what happened, Donald, our boy running for president, was the president of the family real estate firm. And the government amassed overwhelming evidence that the company had a policy of discriminating against blacks, including those serving in the military. To prove the discrimination, blacks were repeatedly dispatched as testers to Trump apartment buildings to inquire about vacancies, and white testers were sent soon after. Repeatedly, the black person was told that nothing was available, while the white tester was shown apartments for immediate rental. A former building superintendent working for the Trumps explained that he was told to code any application by a black person with the letter C for colored, apparently so the office would know to reject it. A Trump rental agent said that the Trumps wanted to rent only to Jews and executives and discouraged renting to blacks. Donald Trump furiously fought the civil rights suit in the courts and the media. I remember that. But the Trumps eventually settled on terms that were widely regarded as a victory for the government. 3 years later, the government sued the Trumps again for continuing to discriminate. Now, in fairness, those suits date from a while back, and the discriminatory policies were probably put in place not by Donald, but by his dad, Fred. Fred, by the way, who appears to have been arrested at a Ku Klux Klan rally in 1927. Now, oddly enough, Woody Guthrie, who lived in a Trump property in the 50s, lambasted Fred Trump in the recently discovered papers for stirring racial hatred. Like father, like son. Yet even if Donald Trump inherited his firm's discriminatory policies, he aligned himself decisively in the 1970s housing battle against the civil rights movement. Another revealing moment came in '89, when the New York City was convulsed by the Central Park jogger case, a rape and the beating of a young white woman. 5 black and Latino teenagers were arrested. Trump stepped in, denounced Mayor Ed Koch's call for peace, and brought full-page newspaper ads calling for the death penalty. The 5 teenagers spent years in jail before being exonerated. In retrospect, they suffered a modern version of a lynching, and Trump played a part in whipping up the crowds. As Trump moved into the casinos, discrimination followed. In the 1980s, according to a former Trump casino worker, Kip Brown, who was quoted by the New Yorker, when Donald and Ivana came to the casino, the bosses would order all the black people off the floor. They put us in the back. In 1991, a book by John O'Donnell, who had been president of the Trump Plaza Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City, quoted Trump as criticizing a black accountant and saying, "Black guys counting my money. I hate it. The only kind of people I want counting my money are short guys that wear yarmulkes every day." I think that the guy is lazy. And it's probably not his fault, because laziness is a trait in blacks. It really is. I believe that. It's not anything they can control. O'Donnell wrote that for months afterward, Trump pressed him to fire the black accountant until the man resigned of his own accord. Trump eventually denied making those comments, But in 1997, in the Playboy interview, he conceded, well, the stuff O'Donnell wrote about me, it's probably true. Now, what really kicked off his campaign, two things. Trump's suggestion that President Obama was born in Kenya, and his insinuation that Obama was admitted to Ivy League schools only because of affirmative action, and his denunciation of Mexican immigrants as, in many cases, criminals, drug dealers, and rapists. His calls for a temporary ban on Muslims entering the United States, his dismissal of an American-born judge of Mexican ancestry as a Mexican who could not fairly hear his case, and his reluctance to distance himself from the Ku Klux Klan in a television interview, plus his retweet of a graphic suggesting that 81% of white murder victims are killed by blacks. The actual figure is about 15%, and so on. Now, Trump has also retweeted messages from white supremacists and Nazi sympathizers, including two from an account called White Genocide TM, with a photo of the American Nazi Party's founder. Trump repeatedly and vehemently denies any racism, and he has deleted some of his offensive tweets. But yet, when you talk about racism, he's always there.
Well, in terms of Donald Trump, I don't know how many anti-Donald Trump demonstrations you've been at. I've been at a whole bunch. In front of Trump Towers on close to 59th Street, 57th Street, we've taken part of those with an organization, an excellent organization, Mexican organization, immigrant Mexican organization here in New York called Ayotzinapa in New York, led by a sister named Angie, with also her brother Israel, and many other fine Mexicans, and also Ecuadorians and other Latinos who are members of Ayotzinapa, New York. And there have been many demonstrations against Donald Trump organized by them, and we've taken part in several of them in front of Trump Towers, and also organized when he was on a recent TV show. When he hosted the program, we were there also protesting with hundreds of people. So there is no question that Donald Trump is a racist. I personally, and people in the Green Party, and people in the Mexican organizations with which I also work closely, have been opposed to Donald Trump and picketed him. But it's not just enough to picket and protest against Donald Trump. We must also remember what Hillary Clinton has done. He is a racist. There's no question about it that, although it's interesting that Donald Trump says that he would get the United States out of NATO, I would like that. He also says that he would withdraw U.S. troops from the Middle East. I doubt very much that he'll do that. These things sound good, but I don't think he's going to follow through. I think these are empty campaign promises, just like Obama promised to help immigrant reform in this country, and he's been the president who has deposed almost twice as many immigrants have been deported under Obama than under George Bush. But if I can finish this line of thought very quickly regarding Hillary Clinton, we don't know what Trump would do. We know what Hillary has done. She is responsible for this horrible coup d'etat in Honduras, Bob. I mean, it's horrible. Fascist murderers. They're killing people, reporters, working people, peasant organizers. They recently, a couple of months ago, killed a woman. Cáceres is her name. She was an environmentalist fighting against the contamination, destruction of the environment by these U.S. corporations in Honduras. Hillary Clinton defended and was a key person in overthrowing the government of President Zelaya in Honduras, until today she still supports that. She is also extremely hostile to the president of Venezuela, President Nicolás Maduro, constantly railing against the man. She has not done anything to make me feel, for example, make anybody feel that she will be a friend of Latin America. On the other hand, she will be an enemy of these progressive presidents like Evo Morales in Bolivia and other countries who are trying to bring a little bit of justice. People that are opposed to, for example, they don't want any more immigrants coming to the United States. That's cool. That's all right. Well, let's start with number one. The United States and big corporations especially, and it's not the American people here. It's not the American public that is responsible for this. It's these big corporations that go into Latin America and they take over the land, they destroy the environment, displace millions of people. Where are they going to go? To the ocean? No, they come to the land of, everybody in Latin America has a TV. Everybody has a cell phone today in Latin America. They see these beautiful pictures of the United States, of New York City. Everybody wants to come here. Stop destroying our economies in Latin America. The United States invaded Puerto Rico 1898. They are still there. And in fact, today, recently, a few weeks ago, they passed legislation which creates a fiscal control board, which is a junta, it's called. It's a junta, literally called, which will now, 5-person junta appointed by the U.S., which will rule over everything that has to do in Puerto Rico. It will have more power than the governor, than the legislature, and then the judicial system in Puerto Rico. And that's democracy at work in Puerto Rico. In Mexico, forget it. In Mexico, we have Plan Mérida, or called the Mérida Initiative, which was approved initially under President Bush,
but which President
Obama and Hillary supports 100%. And Plan Mérida sends billions of U.S. dollars, of your dollars, our dollars, to Mexico, supposedly to fight crime. But the mafia there makes over $23 billion a year is the drug industry in Mexico. And that, instead of fighting drugs, ever since they initiated the Plan Mérida in 2008, just before Obama came in, and who supports it 100%, and incidentally, so does Hillary Clinton support it 100%. Crime in Mexico and murders have just exploded. It's almost triple of what it was in 2008. So all of these policies, we talk about Trump. But what has Hillary done? All of these vicious policies against Latin America and against Africa. We don't have time right now this segment. Maybe
actually, we are running out of time, and I think that it's something that we need to get on straight here. It's difficult for me, to basically try to get this across to people. But my background, in my experience, believe it or not, only 2 people are going to win this election. And see, that's the fact that I keep coming back to. It's going to be Hillary Clinton, or it's going to be Donald Trump. Nobody else, okay? Jill Stein cannot possibly win. She's not even on the ballot in the majority of the states, okay? So that's not going to happen. And sometimes in life, you're forced to make a choice. And as I started to say earlier, the Sanders campaign, all right, and I love Bernie. Anybody who knows my show knows that up until the convention, every show was practically dedicated to Bernie Sanders in some shape, form, or fashion, okay? Now, the wickedness that took place in the DNC, I am very well aware of that, okay? The mainstream Democratic Party, they, as far as I'm concerned, I know when I came back to New York, when I came back home, a broken vet with a young child, a recent widower, the Democratic Party was not there for me. Okay, I'm a Democrat because of conviction, not because the party here in New York has given me a job or has done anything for me. All right, so I think that's something that we need to get online. As a matter of fact, that's one of the problems with today's Democratic Party. They don't act like the old-time politician, okay? And what's happened, and that's a mistake that the party has made, they have fallen out of contact to a very large extent. They take care of their clique, their friends, boom, and that's generally it. All right. That's one of the problems that's coming back to bite us in the butt now. Okay? So I'm not defending the negative things that we have in the Democratic Party. I'm not defending this circus, which is what I see as the New York Board of Elections. And the Democratic Party here in New York has a huge amount of influence with that. I worked at the polls in lieu of trying to get me an employment where I could do something with my master's work and my bachelor's degree. A lady was kind and got me the opportunity to work on the polls, which is maybe twice a year, something like that. And I did that for a couple of years. I didn't like it because I saw the confusion, quite frankly. And that made me a little nervous, and I didn't want to be part of it. So I'm not surprised at what happened out in Brooklyn with all the ballots. And knowing what happened out there, knowing about the falsehood at the DNC and that lady that was in charge, and which, by the way, I wouldn't be surprised if she wound up losing her district back in Florida. Knowing all this, I can still tell you that it's my belief that Bernie Sanders would not have won the nomination simply because of the fact that the black vote is the largest vote in the Democratic Party, and Bernie Sanders unfortunately did not secure that. I wish he had. He should have started to work earlier, but that's a whole other story. Now, when you talk about Hillary and some of the things that she's done to our neighboring country, with South America and what have you, I think the best way that should have been handled is that a committee, for example, a committee within the Green Party or a committee of progressives should have been formed, and you should have made it your business, or that committee could have made it their business to confront Charlie Rangel as, the congressman for this district. Because the House of Representatives are supposed to be players in anything that we do in terms of foreign policy. And you should have basically, figuratively speaking, tied that guy down and say, what is it with Hillary and this problem that she has with Venezuela? This problem that she has with the government in Honduras. What is he trying to do down there? Because it doesn't look kosher. And that's how that should have been handled. Now, as I told you, I'm not here to defend Hillary. All right, she's an adult woman. She can defend herself. But a couple of things I wanted to say in that regard. One of the reasons why it's always seemed that, oh God, well, there goes lying Hillary, or Hillary this, or Hillary that. This is something that started a long time ago. And be quite frank about it, and I hope I don't offend too many people out there. Well, if I do, the hell with it. America's, to a large segment of the American population really needs to grow up, quite frankly.
2 cents out of right.
I agree. Yeah.
I agree.
But the reason why is because she was targeted, in spite of her brilliance coming out of law school and the whole bit, she was targeted as being what they like to used to call down south a nigger lover. And that's where her problems began. Because knowing her background, she started off, and I know for a while she had a seat on the board at Walmart, but before that, the things that she did really upset the status quo there in Arkansas. It upset a lot of the big wheels. The idea of fighting for handicapped kids, fighting for black and Latino kids in Arkansas, especially back in the 70s, that was not a popular thing. And so what Hillary basically did, and she does, and as she admits herself, she is not Miss Personality. And she started off at a relatively young age making lifelong enemies for herself. And I have some experience with that. So I kind of know where she's coming from with that. Now,
But I can
Does that excuse some of the things that I have disagreed with her? I didn't like her Libyan policy. She was wrong to buy into the Bush's war and invasion of Iraq. She was wrong, and I will say that any amount of times. But see, what I'm trying to get people to understand, this election is really not about Hillary. It's about trying to keep Donald Trump out of the White House. Because the guy with a record that I've just read here, this has all been verified. You can look it up in the Justice Department. And then you have to ask yourself, why do I want someone like that in the White House having to deal with foreign leaders? Why do I want someone like that having the nuclear codes? Why do I want someone like that looking over my shoulder when I'm doing top secret work the same way the vice president and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs used to look over mine when I was doing my thing at DIA? We don't need a man like that. That man is dangerous. We have no idea how deep his ties with Putin go. And one other thing, one of the big problems that I've always had, and you talk to other associates in the Green Party, and they'll tell you, I was saying this back in 06 and 05. The Green Party, unfortunately, the Greens and a lot of progressives in general, especially here in the Northeast, they don't have enough people that have some experience being on the inside of government. Sometimes when you're on the inside, you actually see things and you begin to understand, well, this really looks crappy. This should not be happening. But then this is happening because of A, B, and C. The idea of just bringing everybody back, okay, our cavalry that we got over in the plains of the Black Forest in Germany, the 7th Fleet, bring the ships out of the base in Yokohama, Japan, all that sounds real nice. But then you have to start asking yourself questions. Okay, well, we abandoned Asia. So how do you like the idea of Japan having thermonuclear weapons?
Okay, well, let's go into that. Let me get a few minutes here. First of all, going back to the Donald Trump quote, that article you read from the New York Times, it's interesting, and we should remember that Donald Trump comes from the Democratic Party. And you could find very easily, anybody could do it, you could look for pictures with Donald Trump embracing Hillary and vice versa. Let me finish. Donald Trump, once upon a time, was a Democrat, and they were hubby-lubby. So if he were a candidate today running for whatever under a Democratic Party, he'd have the total support of the Democratic Party. Hillary, on the other hand, once upon a time back in the 1960s, and you know this, Bob, she was a Republican. She was a Republican once upon a time.
She was a Goldwater girl.
Yeah, that's right. She was a Goldwater girl. So I'm not saying, people change. Once upon a time, I was, believe it or not, keep this a secret, I used to be in favor of the war in Vietnam. Do you believe that? I cannot believe it, but once upon a time, I actually defended troops going out there and slaughtering all these people Muhammad Ali is one of the people that made me aware, because Muhammad Ali said, no Viet Cong ever called me nigger. And that's why he opposed the war. And I started thinking about those things. And a fine history teacher I had at Benjamin Franklin High School named Miss Engelmeyer. She helped me develop my political awareness a lot. But in any case, jumping back into the what's going on right now today, the Green Party has candidates which are black, Latinos, also, white working people. For example, 2 years ago, Howie Hawkins, a Teamster, a working man.
Excellent guy.
And he increased fourfold the votes of the Green Party to well over
guy.
200, from 50,000 to well over 200,000 votes.
Great guy.
Ramon Jimenez, Puerto Rican, South Bronx, leader of the South Bronx Community Congress, who is now deceased, unfortunately, died recently. Yeah, Ramon Jimenez was candidate for Attorney General. A black man, Brian Jones, was candidate for lieutenant governor, and so on and so forth. And yours truly, Puerto Rican, I'm running against Espaillat for the 13th Congressional District this year. So the Green Party, it's
that's what you guys need to do.
Yeah, well,
I
it's still mostly white dominated nationwide, but I think in certain areas, black, Latinos, Asians are also making a presence, and it's a lot of white working people are members, not enough, and I think we have to increase that, and also the presence of black and immigrants and Latinos and so on and so forth. But this election, more than anything, is going to be an election, I think, about how the economy in this country is going to run. Is it going to be giving everything away to the corporations? Probably Trump or Hillary will win. I don't think Jill Stein will win. I agree with you. One of those two is going to win. Whoever wins, the corporations are going to continue the slaughtering of people in Africa. Let me finish here, please. Because it took a long time, and I'm probably not going to get another chance. Under President Obama, the first black president is the first president that bombs Africa. They're blessed to have American bombs dropped and that's why they needed a black president to do that. The Middle East has been a disaster, total disaster. Even Trump has to point it out, with Hillary supporting the savage war that's going on in Syria. That country was in peace. There was no reason to go in there and slaughter these people. There was nothing going on there against the United States. The same way they went into Iraq, destroyed that country, killed millions of people. There was no need to go in there.
You got to be confused. I think you're confused.
No. Hillary Clinton. No, Hillary Clinton supported all of these wars in Iraq. She supports still sending more troops into Iraq right now. Ironically, Trump says get them out of there. I don't think he's going to get them out. But in any case, the point is that all of these wars are supported by Hillary. Hillary Clinton has not seen a war that she doesn't like, and especially when it's in favor of U.S. corporate interests, because none of these wars are in the interest of working people. Working people have to fight them disproportionately. Black and Latino, poor white workers die in these wars for the big corporate system, but they don't reap the benefits of these wars. They go to the corporate system. I should say one other detail. In this Democratic Party convention, where was Black Lives Matter? People thought, and even I think some leaders of Black Lives Matter mass organization expected to have some type of respect and presence there. Black people were totally ignored. Basically totally ignored, and the whole campaign, for example, which has been going on over the last few months or the last couple of years intensely, trying to stop police murders across this country of unarmed black men, and I should say also unarmed white men, because there have been thousands of white men, also white working men, unarmed, have been killed by the cops, and nothing is said by Hillary about this. Nothing ever. She'll criticize the fact that something is done wrong, and supposedly wrong, in Syria or in Libya, but she says nothing about the slaughter of black unarmed men and white working class men in this country by police. So we have to focus on these things, and we have to vote for a candidate which promises jobs in this country, which is against police brutality, and that's Jill Stein, and also a woman that will shut down Indian Point, for example, the nuclear reactor, which is 36 miles away from New York City, and if it explodes, say goodbye to this earth.
Listen, one thing I think that you need to understand, okay? I'm here, like I say, to make sure that people understand that we need to elect Hillary Clinton. I'm not here to give my blessing to everything that her or the Democratic Party has done, let's say over the last 30 years, okay? One thing I need to point out, and I'm taking it upon myself, and I hope that there are other people with me, God willing, we get her in. Our job from then on will be to hold her feet to the fire. And I think that that's one of the big problems.
That sounds like torturing her.
Well, I mean, I speak figuratively, of course, but that's one of the big problems that people of color have been making over the last 30 years. All right, we helped to put Obama in the White House, and then we just said, hooray, and everybody took a break. And what happened? 2010, you had a huge, I mean huge reaction to having a black man in the White House. And that's the problem that we're stuck with now, with this terrible right-wing Republican Congress. Now also, something else that I think people need to understand. The Democratic Party is, just like the Republican Party, the Democratic Party is in need of a thorough house cleaning. We need to have some knockdown, drag out rumbles. And people are going to have to get activated, and they're going to have to, actually go in there and fulfill their responsibility as citizens. That's the problem that I have with people of color, okay? We have this idea that, politics is something that's over there. And some of those people over there, they take care of that. Well, see, if you want to have a democratic republic that's responsive to your needs and to the needs of your family and friends, then you have to understand that you are going to have to somehow fit politics in your day-to-day agenda. I remember this girl at the place where I worked at. She said, I'm just not into politics. And I told her, my sister, how do you get into politics? Because politics is sure enough going to get into you. And I think that's one of the big ass problems with the Democratic Party. The average person that votes Democratic, just taking here in New York for an example, they really don't get involved unless we're talking about a week or so before Election Day. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, you cannot have a representative form of government like that. Now, I spent a lot of time in Europe, right? And the situation is quite different. I've had intelligent, informed conversations on geopolitics with guys that their living is to pick up garbage. And I must say, I've had more interesting conversations with folks like that. I remember that night in Marseille one time, and I got in this long conversation with this guy. And he was a sanitation engineer. Mm-hmm. And he made a hell of a lot more sense than a lot of these people going to grad school up in Columbia or NYU.
Well, my theory is the more you go to universities, the more brainwashed you become, and basically the idea is to indoctrinate you with ruling class theology. I just want to say one thing quickly, being that we're approaching an end. Well, I would like President Obama, if he does nothing else for Puerto Rico, to free a political prisoner who has been in jail longer than Mandela was. He has been in jail for 35 years. He is only accused of being an activist for Puerto Rican independence. He is not accused of having carried out any violent act. Oscar Lopez Rivera has been in jail for 35 years. He is a veteran. He is a Vietnam veteran. He's 73, 74 years old. So we demand from President Obama to please release political prisoner Oscar Lopez Rivera, who has been in jail for 35 years.
That sounds good.
Thank you.
You need to make sure that he's made aware of that. See, that's the way the system is supposed to work. Now, as I said before, I wasn't here to hold Hillary's shield. I'm here to make sure that she gets elected and Donald Trump doesn't. Because only two of them one of them is going to get in. And we cannot afford as a nation for that person to be Donald Trump. It's not a question about too dangerous. Well, maybe it is. Because I really believe if he gets in, you have two Republican senators who support Trump, by the way. They want to put Black Lives Matter on the terrorist list. With the laws that have been signed starting from the Iraqi invasion, it's quite possible. And I don't trust, I'm sorry, they talk about trusting Hillary or not trusting Hillary? Right, you're going to choose Donald Trump over Hillary.
Well, it would have been good if Hillary had invited Black Lives Matter to the Democratic convention.
Yes, that convention could have been handled better on that score in terms of people who wanted to demonstrate. Listen, great conversation. Glad you folks were able to tune in on us. See you next week.
Thank you, Bob.
That was excellent.
Thank you, Bob.
That was excellent.